Welcome to Boba Joe Mania, an all new episode.
Hello, everybody. You ready to go to the talkies?
I am indeed. So today's topic, we're talking about not just films, but films or movies that we've seen in the cinema at any point in our life that were just like good experiences, and whether it was a genuinely good film, or you saw it with a friend or family, or maybe had a drink or something naughty for you, and whatever. They had a good experience at the cinema, whatever the criteria or whatever happened.
Yeah, and who knows, it's a topic that maybe in 20 or 30 years' time could be completely alien and foreign to a lot of people because
Yeah, I miss the
at
cinema
least,
so much now. Well, it still
yeah,
exists, but there's nothing there for me to watch.
exactly, it does still exist, but you'd barely know it. The last couple of times I've
Mm.
been, it wasn't looking too full. Now maybe that was
You're going a bit quiet on your thing.
oh, sorry,
Yeah,
it
there
may
you
have
go.
been
Yeah,
the choice of movie that I went to attend, but yeah, it's certainly not the same as the glory days of
you saw that.
past
You
that
saw
we used
that
to enjoy.
Alien Romulus or Remus. What you saw that at the cinema, didn't you?
Yeah, that was only probably I think the first I went to see that twice. The first showing it was about
Hmm.
half full, and the second showing, which was a few days later, I think they'd already moved it into a smaller screen,
Yeah.
and there
Oh
wasn't
man,
that many people there. So
I watched
hey,
it at
look,
home
there's a
last
lot of
week, and
stuff.
it wasn't bad. It felt like one of those Dark Horse '90s comics, like a smaller story, and right from the opening frames, I went, "Oh, this is not going to be not shit." From when it opened, I was like, "This is
Yeah,
okay."
yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with it, especially since I had heard that that was originally supposed to be released only for streaming. So the
Yeah,
fact that they were actually able to produce something that looked good enough for the big screen, I thought
yeah.
was impressive because it was a very
But it
visually
had that
impressive film.
feel like the opening of stuff like Blade Runner and that, and they're all kind of everything's dark and horrible looking and just like like polluted, because it was a mining planet in it.
Yeah, no, Romulus was good fun. Yeah, it's been my most recent cinema trip, and which is
Mm.
crazy to say because it's
I haven't
already
been in
been
about
released
5 years
on.
to anything. I almost went to see Furiosa last year, and I was mistakenly under the impression that Charlize Theron was in the movie, and because originally she was going to be in the movie, but at some point along the way that changed. I had no idea because nothing in the marketing really told me. It's just like Furiosa, it's out. So I was like, I'll go watch this, and no disrespect to the actress who was in the film, who did a fine job, and the movie's fine. I enjoyed it. I watched it months later at home because I just didn't get around to going. I've still had for the last 12 months $100 gift card for the cinema. I've had nothing to use it on.
Does your local cinema ever show classics? Like, do they do
No,
classic
no.
movies?
If I
Right.
did, I would
Right.
go. There's so many old films I would love to see on the big screen. Like I would love to see Into the Dragon or any of the early Sean Connery Bond films. I would happily watch more than once on a cinema screen.
Yeah, because I know there's maybe one or two on my list today that were kind of like
Mhm.
re-releases or re-screenings.
Yeah,
So
yeah. There's nothing
I
like that
tried
around
to.
here. It's quite sad. If you live in Melbourne or Sydney, they have like film festivals. Sydney's got the most film culture. If you go back into the history of Australian cinema, it's all kind of centered around there. As far as the festivals, like you got Cannes and Sundance, that kind of stuff. Sydney's about the only place in Australia does anything equivalent. Well, they have genuine festivals, world cinema, Aussie cinema, new things, old things, re-releases of stuff, play classic stuff. It's Sydney's pretty much the place. But the rest of the country, forget about. Australia's not a big cinema culture as far as there's well over 100 years of films at this point, but most people are only interested in whatever slop they're shoveling up to you at the multiplex this week. Which, if you go back in the 80s and 90s, there was plenty of slop that I loved and enjoyed, but now it's not really there anymore.
Yeah, I remember like back in the 90s, I used to like just kind of rock up to the cinema without even having even made a decision as to what I was going
Yeah,
to go
I went
watch.
every week. I went every week for years. It was five
Multiple
dollars. I
times
had
a week
some years
sometimes.
where I used to have years around 94, 95. I went like every week. And I used to have this big pile of ticket stubs sitting at home in my bedroom, and one day I counted them. There was like over 100 ticket stubs for different films.
Yeah, a lot of the times, or a lot of summers in the 90s, I would usually go down to my aunt's for a couple of weeks with my sister, different part of the country, and the days could be pretty boring, but thankfully she lived about 7 miles away from a town with a cinema. So during the summers, for those few weeks I'd be there, used to go to the cinema nearly every second day at least. And sometimes you might watch the same movie multiple times, even if it was kind of like a shitty movie, just for something to do. It was just cheap to go in and hang around and watch a movie.
Yeah, I had 2 times in my life where I watched the most films in the cinema, and like one time, like the peak, the peak of like every year I've lived, and like one was around kind of early to mid 90s, I guess, around that period. And I saw a lot of stuff because there was lots of stuff to see, and it was cheap, and it was $5. I used to go to Hoyt's 8 Multiplex on Morehouse Ave in Christchurch. Used to be an old train station, not in my lifetime, but a long, long time ago. So it was retired. It was a big old building. It was a historic building, quite nice looking. The front had a kind of arcade. You had like your Marvel vs. Capcom and Street Fighter Alpha and all that. But when the big earthquakes happened, that building got pretty wrecked. So I don't know what happened to it since. I've got no idea if they rebuilt it or turned it to something else. And the other peak was when I moved to Australia post-year 2000. First time I was in Perth. There was the Piccadilly Cinema in Perth City, right in the inner heart of the city, which was apparently really old cinema. When you go in, it's actually had Art Deco stuff on the walls in there, because it actually was like quite old. I think it was like 60 or 70 years old, at least at the time. This is 20 years ago. But it was basically like a decommissioned cinema that they reopened again. Someone took it over where it'd been out of business, and they just started putting on $5 movies and $2 movies at a time that tickets were costing $20. And I would walk past there to go to jiu-jitsu class, and from where I live, I'd walk across, and that's how I found it, just walking this little arcade. And I was like, what's this movie here? $2. I'm like, I watched that Saturday, fucking Spy Kids 3 or some shit. And it's like, terrible film, but I don't care. I was bored on the Saturday. It's $2. I watched it. But other times I went in Shaun of the Dead. I watched Shaun of the Dead on Saturday afternoon, $2. And other times I went there. So I saw all kinds of stuff there. Like I went there every week for 2 or 3 years. Hellboy. Or it might have been Hellboy 2. One of those I saw there for $5.
I reckon for me, my peak years of attendance would probably be between maybe 96 and 03 or 04. Just for like having the time and the inclination to actually go multiple times in a week, repeatedly. But going to see, like I said, sometimes you might go back and see the same movie over and over again, and it might not be that good, but you just wanted something to do, and it was cheap. Like I'm pretty sure, might have been, it was either 97 or 98, whenever that Lost in Space movie was.
The one that had bloody Matt LeBlanc from Friends.
Yeah. Like I saw that.
The best thing about that was a soundtrack from Apollo 440. Like I listened to that soundtrack, but man, that movie was bad.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad, but I still saw it in the cinema like 3 times.
Yeah. I had my brother had the robot that actually had a pretty cool toy line from that film. That they did a really big, massive robot of the robot from that version, and it was quite cool. He had it for years in his bedroom.
I might actually rewatch that. I don't think I've rewatched that movie since I saw
Just remember, the last one to kill a bad guy has to buy the beers. That was with the trailer.
Yeah, what a flop commercially. I was probably
the soundtrack kicks ass
though. Box office.
Yeah. Apollo 440, they didn't just do the soundtrack, they did like pretty much a whole album of just that soundtrack as one of their regular albums.
No, I'm definitely going to take another stab at 90s Lost in Space soon. I do remember reading at the time that apparently there was like a lot of stuff cut from the movie, which shocked me because it was a pretty long ass movie as it was. So maybe someday
I almost forgot that movie existed. That was before they started doing masses of remakes of like 60s and 70s TV shows and that, or even 50s stuff, before like Charlie's Angels, and when they started just remaking like everything.
Yeah. But yeah, whoever, well, I don't know, was it Warner Brothers? Whoever put it out anyway, you owe me because I went to see that movie 3 times. I was contributing heavily to the box office for that movie.
So are you partially to blame why after Friends that Joey got his own TV show? Like how Norm got his own show from Cheers. And
yeah, Joey, 2 seasons of shite.
2 seasons, I didn't know it made it to a second season.
Shocking.
Oh yeah. So I've got to throw out we've got we were kind of just like getting warmed up here, but we've both got some picks and no particular order. It's not like a ranking or anything, but we've both like picked some of our all-time kind of favorite films we saw in the cinema and whatever. And it's not just about the quality of the film itself, but like the experience of watching something in the cinema. There's films I've seen that were kind of average, but you watched it in the surround sound on the big screen, and even kind of shitty films are more enjoyable if you're watching at the cinema and it's a good day and you're not like kind of hungover or too tired from work or something. But I might as well throw out the big one because it's on both of our lists. So let's throw it out. Jurassic Park, 1994.
Oh yeah, what a treat! What an absolute treat to get to see this in the cinema. And this was one of those summers I was up in my aunt's house, who I mentioned earlier on in Longford, and that was when I first got to see Jurassic Park. My sister and I went to the cinema on a Friday night. It was packed. We had to sit near the back.
Yeah, my session was packed too. Every seat was full. It was like 100+ seats. Everyone was full. And I think I already told the same story on when we did our Jurassic Park episodes last year on the toys and movies. There was a big guy who come in right as the cinema was full, but the lights were still on. And he was quite overweight. He'd been 3 times the size of me. He come in after like 5 minutes before the movie's about to start and the lights are about to go out. And he was in the wrong seat, and someone else come and they tried to get into the seat, and he sits there going, I'm not moving, and started yelling and screaming. And the usher had to come down, who's some like pimply faced 15-year-old, like the skinnier than me. He's like, excuse me, sir, you're gonna have to move. And he's like, I'm not fucking moving. And the guy's like, okay then. So the other guy had to walk around the usher, the lights went out then, and the usher had to take the other guy and find the one seat in over 100 seats in the dark that someone wasn't sitting in. They had no idea where it was. It took them he was walking around for ages trying to find it with his torch.
Oh, dude. I hope he got to sit down before the credits
started.
Oh,
he did eventually. He didn't miss the movie because we still had trailers and that, but it would get very dark. Without the torch, you couldn't see a bloody thing in there.
Well, I'll tell you, on that night that I went to see Jurassic Park for the first time, I believe they were also showing the Super Mario Brothers movie in that cinema. And I have to say, so I was obviously familiar with Super Mario in the video game format. And I knew that both movies would contain dinosaurs. And I have to say, for a little while on the night, I was leaning towards going to Super Mario Brothers instead of going to see Jurassic Park.
That's interesting. They're at the same.
Me to go to Jurassic Park.
I saw both of those, but in New Zealand, the Mario Brothers was months apart earlier and months apart from, or it might have been after. And it was months apart at the cinema when I saw it. It was like I don't know if it was even the same year for me. It might have been more than 6 months away because I saw it on a friend of a friend's had like a birthday or whatever, and they, when you're like your mum or dad is friends with someone else, and you get to go to that kid's party, even though you go to different schools or whatever, you're not necessarily like best buds, but you know them by association over many years, so you get to go to some birthday things. But we all got to go to that Super Mario Brothers movie, and I had no idea what the hell it was going to be about, other than Super Mario, and I hadn't played Super Mario at that point, so I didn't. To me, it was just a movie. I didn't know about all the weird stuff.
Now, just because I'm actually looking it up here, it had come out like the year before, or a few months before, but it just goes to show you the distribution in Ireland at the time, that it was still sitting in the cinema.
Jurassic Park played for over 6 months in Christchurch. I remember it was still there. Like I saw it middle of the year, and it was still going in December, I'm pretty sure. And we
Yeah,
used
I
to get
remember
stuff
watching.
6 to 12 months after USA quite often in New Zealand.
I'm pretty sure like that. I know we're veering off topic a little bit, but the
Yeah.
Power Rangers movie, I believe, that came out in '97.
Mhm.
I didn't watch it until 1998 in the cinema. So
Yeah.
sometimes there just be these weird type of
Yeah.
stuff would either
And
stay
like,
for
we get
ages
stuff
or would arrive late.
later outside of America, but some movies, when they were popular, if something was popular, some movies played for 12 months every week because they kept making money. So there's no reason to stop them. Not like now, it's out for like 1 week or a month and then they just pull them out.
Well, Jurassic Park was definitely in the cinema over here for a long time because
Yeah.
at the time it set the record for me when I went to see it like 3 times. That was like a massive deal that
I
I
saw
could
it
go to
2
see it
weeks in a
when.
row.
It was such a big deal. It was such a big deal. And I was already a dinosaur kid anyway. Like I was obsessed with
Yeah, yeah.
dinosaurs.
I just saw it because it was
So
dinosaurs. I didn't really know what was going to happen and a whole lot about it. So when I watched it, I was like, wow, it was amazing. And most of the time, then week to week, I would just see a different movie every week. But if there wasn't a new movie out, if there was something really good out, it'd be like, oh, I'll go watch that again.
and I was like, at the time when Jurassic Park the movie came out, I was not aware of the book or anything to do with
No, well, I wasn't either.
what it was based on.
I'd
So
heard of
yeah, all I
Carnosaur because
knew
I had a magazine that had it on the cover, but I hadn't seen that either.
all I knew it was a movie with dinosaurs. I thought the reason it was called Jurassic Park was just some type of clever, like they're just going to be on an island with dinosaurs. I didn't think there was actually going to be a park, for
Yeah,
dinosaurs. But I knew nothing. I knew absolutely nothing apart from the few little clips of the trailer I'd seen before
yeah.
we actually
I
went
don't
to
know
the
if I even
cinema
saw
that
the
night.
TV trailer or not. It was one of those merchandising bonanzas like Batman. There was pencil cases and puzzle and coloring book, just stuff everywhere. So even if you knew nothing about it, it was just merchandise all over the place. Trading cards. Yeah.
And that, like, I suppose that original trilogy of Jurassic Park movies, I think each successive one I broke the record for going to see. So the first movie I saw
Yeah.
3 times, then I saw The Lost World 4 times, and then I saw Jurassic Park
Oh
movie
wow.
5 times. Which is ironic that the worse in quality the movies got, the more times I went to see them in the cinema for some
I
reason.
didn't get to see those. I didn't get to see the sequels until like I want to say 2005 when they were at the video rental store on DVD, and it was the first time I got to see them.
Yeah, that first movie, man, what an experience. And it just really got my imagination going. Um,
But now I
just
got
for
those
everything.
Blu-ray sets, I can pull them out and I'll just watch them all in a row on a weekend.
Oh, I still like Jurassic Park is still like a magic movie for me. And look,
Yeah, yeah.
anybody listening to this show is not surprised because we literally dedicated an entire episode to it at
I think
one
we did
point,
2 or 3
just
of
movie
those.
alone. Yeah, we did. Yeah,
We did
we
the
were talking
toys as
all
well.
sorts of stuff. Yeah,
Oh, Cadillacs of
so it's
Dinosaurs. That was the third dinosaur because we
that's
did
right.
3 dinosaur episodes of the row last year.
Dino Mania, folks, go back and check it out.
Dino
Plug in
Mania.
that show. All of these previous Boba Joe shows are available on the Boba Joe network. You can go and view them at
Are
any
they available
time.
on demand?
They're available on demand.
Do I have
Big
to pay
announcement.
a very high fee for them?
Boba Joe show will be coming to TikTok on January 20th.
Oh,
Mark it down on your
fantastic.
calendars.
Does that
And I
mean they'll
also
have to
believe,
learn how to do like crunk and booty dancing and stuff like this?
don't worry though, Johnny, because TikTok's actually been banned in the States on January 19th.
Ah,
So
oh, fantastic. Well,
it
that,
should
that
be
puts me
fine.
at ease. I won't have to learn all those weird, sexy cheerleader stripper dances or anything because nobody wants to see that, including myself.
Yeah, we'll be debuting the day after it's banned.
I guess I'm looking at my cheat sheet on the side here, and I'm gonna go with one of your picks and tell us. So go that same era, like I assume it was in the 90s because I had a mate who liked this stuff. Star Wars Special Edition trilogy.
Yes, it was 1997.
There you
The
go.
year
So I
that
remember my mate got on about this, who was really. I never had the Star Wars toys as a kid, but he had some. I'd seen in his house when he come out. He was making a big fuss about them. To me, I'm like, I don't give a shit. I don't care about Star Wars, but so I'd listen to what he was talking about and get all excited.
well, these were a massive deal for me for a couple of reasons. The first reason is because I am still, I suppose, a really big Star Wars fan.
Hmm.
But the second reason is this was my first time ever experiencing going to the cinema to watch a movie that I'd already watched on video. That was a completely alien concept to me at the
Yeah, yeah.
time.
It was rare because
Like
it'd been a long time since the early '80s when they'd finished up the original ones on it.
yeah, because like my only viewing, I wasn't even born, when Return of the Jedi was playing in the cinema, so I would have never had a chance to watch that original trilogy in the cinema. So it, like it was just such a novel concept to me that I was sitting watching a movie, but knew everything that was going to happen, knew the lines
Mm.
off by heart. Like it was so different an experience because up until then, any movie I wanted to go watch in the cinema, or any movie I did go watch in the cinema, it was something I'd never seen before. For the
Yeah.
most part, or knew
Can
nothing
you
about.
can you tell me? Because my memory is kind of I didn't see it in cinema. My memory is hazy, and I remember my mate having them on VHS and all that. So that cinematic release was that the cinema cut, or was that when they added the CG stuff in? Which version was that
It's
you
when
saw at the
they
cinema?
it's when they added the CG stuff in.
Right, the
So I
little
suppose
baby Jabba the Hutt
yeah,
walking past and all that, and Greedo
yeah. There's
shooting
lots
and
of
that stuff. Right.
yeah. So there was lots of, even though you're watching a film you haven't seen before, but there's all of a sudden there's these added effects and extra little moments. Now, as a kiddo in '97, I was kind of excited by the new CGI stuff. As an
My
adult now,
mate showed them to me on
I
VHS at home, and he was going, "Oh, look at this bullshit!"
yeah, you see that's where I'm at now. Like as a grizzled,
Because he'd seen him at the cinema, and
adult.
then he was coming home. He had the excitement. He's come home, and then he showed him going, "Hang on, this looks dodgy as fuck." When you watch it over on TV.
Yeah, this looks totally like not suitable for the other footage I'm looking at here. It stands
Mm.
out like a sore thumb, especially when you rewatch it now. The extra kind of added CGI effects. I'll give I'll give a little plug here to Universal Toy Collector Stu. Over on his channel recently, I did
I was
a little
listening to him
talk with
this
him
morning.
about. We did a Star Wars talk. He does a series called "What Made Star Wars Great,"
Yeah,
where
yeah, it's a good series. I've been listening to
we
his
we
Scuba Pete ones from a couple of years ago.
we kind of went into detail on my likes and dislikes of the special editions, if anybody cares to watch. But for me, for the most part, as a youngster, I was excited for the new stuff, the new added stuff. It was only when I got older when I started kind of looking at it with a more critical eye, and I was like, they never fucking should have fucked around with these movies at all. They should have just left them alone. But
Yeah, I never seen any of
we
those at
live and
the
learn.
cinema, but when I came to Australia about the year 2000, and I stayed at the time with my mum, stepdad, brother, and sister, and I hadn't seen any of them for about 7 years, so it was great getting to see them all. And we were living together, and whatever new movies were out, we went and watched stuff. We watched, I don't know, all sorts. Can't remember half of it. I think as a family, we saw both of the first two live action Transformers movies, which were awful, but it's just a Saturday thing to go out and have a family. Sometimes we'd have lunch or a meal after. We saw episode one, Star Wars, and whenever the heck that Clone Wars animated film came out, we also saw that, and also saw the Pokemon movie because my brother and sister were into that too. And so we just all go out and watch like new stuff and that. Yeah. But I wasn't like going, oh yeah, I'm anticipating episode one because I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't care. It's just a movie. I'm just watching it. I've got no skin in the game. I had no idea of the story or anything.
And you're in a way, Johnny, you are kind of a rare breed in some ways, because obviously, like Star Wars, it kind of it's had its grasp of many
Hmm.
a young mind and heart, but you kind of
I've learned
sidestepped
from
the.
people that are more into it. Like, I mean, you've known more about wrestling over the years, so I've learned from you. And my mate Sam lives in Frankston, and my other mate, who was also the guy I was talking about from high school, the Star Wars dude, he's also been in wrestling. So by osmosis, I've learned things about stuff and could probably name a heap of characters, but I don't like really follow the Star Wars story or anything. And I like the original ones as films, and I can happily watch them as a film. But to me, it's what they are as a film. I don't care about all the media and the culture and the toys. I mean, they're nice toys, but I've never collected them, and don't care to.
And that, folks, is why you will probably not see us do a continuing series on the Star Wars. movie over
Oh,
successive
we'll definitely do it.
shows.
We could easily do 2 episodes on like one focus on the toy, like vintage toy line, and one focus on the original films. That would be like my sort of thing to go to, because I at least I know something about those versus nothing.
Well, it is interesting though, getting the perspective of someone who's just not really dyed in the wool totally into it, because
To me, they're
when
just
you're a
films.
long
Like I
term,
like films
exactly.
and film history, and they've got their place in film history, and they're quality films. I'm not knocking them, but like it's in the same way I might watch a Kurosawa film. I might watch a Star Wars, George Lucas, like, and that's where it begins and ends for me. It's just a film. I don't like. Not like Batman or Ninja Turtles. My brain will be like, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool if this character, this and this character." I'm like, anyone could live or die on Star Wars. I don't give a shit. It just has no emotional impact on me one way or another.
And in a way, I envy you for that.
I like all the sound effects. I like all the pew pew pew. Or that arcade game in the 80s, that vector graphics one, like on the big arcade, that was cool.
But yeah, I will say though, at the time back in '97, I was tremendously excited to see those special editions. Like I went to see all 3 of
I
them
remember it was a
in the
big
cinema,
deal. There was a lot of marketing about it and all that.
and you'd mentioned about the Phantom Menace Episode 1.
I remember
I
all the
would go to see
toys.
that.
All the
Yeah,
toys were in the stores because it was 99 toys were in stores, and it was 2000 was in Australia where I actually saw the film. So the first half of 99, I remember seeing the toys everywhere. They were taking up like half the section in any shop that had a toy section. They were just going, "Oh man, this is Star Wars. This is this big legacy brand. We've got to overstuff every shelf, every display, every cardboard cutout, hanging stuff from the ceiling." And then you go back there a year later, and all the shit's still sitting there.
I
I mean, they
imagine as
certainly
someone
sold a
who
lot of
was
it, but they just overstocked because they hadn't had a big toy boom like that since the 80s as far as actually selling, enough units.
not a Star Wars fan, that would probably even make you more disillusioned than ever wanting to get to know anything about it. You're probably just sick of seeing all this
I didn't
shit.
care one way or another because I'd go in and look at stuff and I'm like, here's all these Star Wars toys, and I'll have a look at the Kenner Batmans over here or whatever, all the fucking ice polar Batman and yellow freeze electric Batman shit. And I'd see all that stuff and look at it all and look at the video games. But if I was there with my friend who was into Star Wars, he would stop and look at them and he might tell me something about one of the characters or the things, or he would look for, I think as a lot of fans did, if they like the vehicles, if they did a good vehicle at a good price that was like some of the old style ones, but in the new line, you might get a good deal,
Yeah. Johnny, #1 Star Wars fan.
Yeah. I do have one cool piece of merchandise up there in the corner. There's a big giant Jack specific Vader that's about 20 inches tall. Because I got that on sale somewhere one time. Yeah.
I think I have the Stormtrooper that goes with that, or from the same series.
Yeah. There's a lot of those big giant shampoo bottle figures around Star Wars ones that look cool. I used to see them that came out all the time. Like I used to see like Spider-Man and bloody Stormtrooper and Chewie. They would have them all the time.
What was the show though? The cultural impact that even kind of non-fan Johnny still has a big Darth Vader in his collection.
Well, it was just cool, and I put them because it's Jack specific. Makes those big crazy ones like that. I mean, I got those NECA ones there, 1/4. They're 18 inches, so they're 20, 22, maybe 25 inches. The bloody they're taller than the Transformers Titans. Those crazy Batman and Vader, and he's just a cool, like cinematic bad guy. Like like I want a Pinhead or a Jason or a Freddy Krueger. Like, is Darth Vader just a badass guy in black, like a space western bad dude. So it's just a cool looking, figure. And he also looks a bit like a robot. So there you go.
Man in black.
Robot Samurai Man.
Yeah, Star Wars. I had to slip it in because, it was a big deal for me.
Yeah. It's fun. I've read like various essays on film stuff and talking about the thing to me that appeals really about the Star Wars for the original ones, and I'm not trying to knock other ones since then, but that's the stuff I've seen as a kid, and 82, 83, when I was a young kid on VHS or whatever. I've seen something at home, barely remember it, but that's the first time I've seen something. I like all the model making, like the special effects are cool, but really all the miniatures, all the model making, all the Alien and Blade Runner, Ridley Scott kind of shit, same kind of thing of that era. That's what I genuinely like about the Star Wars, and I would rather watch like a 5-hour documentary about Star Wars than watch any of the films really, and just all the behind the scenes stuff. And what's the dude, the Sid Mead or whoever done all the concept art, like that guy's amazing. That stuff interests me more than the films itself.
That's cool. That's cool. And like I said, in a way, you're a rarity, especially I suppose in our circles because of the type of stuff.
Mm.
You know,
I just
the
didn't have the toys
crossover
as a
and
kid,
that.
so if I'd had a whole pile of the toys, maybe I would have a bit more, and seen the films more at a younger age. I'd probably have more of an attachment to it, but I just didn't. Like I've seen bits of them when I was a kid, but it was just something else in the rotation. You know, you watch fucking Krull, Ice Pirates, bloody Star Wars or Stargate or Star Trek or whatever. They're all interchangeable to me when I was a kid.
Oh, so you're not like a Trekkie. That's not the reason why you don't like Star Wars, because you're a dirty Trekkie.
I do like Star Trek, but I mostly like the original series, and I like the original crew the best out of all of them. I've never liked. I think I've watched pretty much all of them really, but the original one is always my favorite, and just the cast, like bloody Shatner, who was apparently often a prick to people I always watched while he was making that show, bit of a prima donna, but I do like him. Leonard Nimoy, who used to do the old In Search Of and all those weird shows in the 70s with Bigfoot and whatever the hell they were doing, and just the cast. I love the cast from that show.
Yeah, I love original Trek. I'm a big Trekkie.
Yeah.
I won't get into it now. We'll save that for another show.
I did have a couple of those Playmates toys in the 90s, but that was like Generations era, so it was the tail end of Next Generation. They had those movies. I had the Spock and the Scotty figure, but I don't have them anymore. They live in my dad's collection. They're with his die-cast cars, and he's got little tools in their hand like they're working on the cars, and that's where they live. And they stayed there when I left. But yeah, I'll go. We'll go on to another movie now. I'm going to grab one from my little cheat sheet on the side here. Otherwise, I won't remember the damn things. So I'll go. I've got Muppet Movie now. So I'll tell you the kind of experience or whatever. So around 84 or 85, I saw a Muppet movie. I don't know which one because there was 3 out by this point. We had Muppets, Muppet Caver, and Muppets New York or whatever the hell it was. You had 3 movies by 85. You had 3 different films out. One was in the 70s, the other 2 came out in the 80s. But I believe the one I saw with my dad as a kid was either the first or second Muppet live action movie, because I believe it was one that was like an anniversary replay thing at the cinemas. I don't think it was the Take Manhattan in the City, because I remember it being more outdoors and country, and I don't remember seeing skyscrapers or buildings or nothing like that in it. So I think it was one of those first 2, and that movie was just like a really kind of dim memory now, but if I close my eyes, I can still remember my dad was sitting on the left side of me. We're pretty much in the middle of the cinema, and just seeing the Muppets on the big screen and all that. Of course, they've been going since the 70s on the TV show. I love the TV show to death. I've got them all on the DVD. I've got the box sets of most of the first 6 or 8 films up till about Treasure Island or whatever the hell from the 90s. And that just made such an impression on me. I love the film. It was great being there with my dad as a kid. Just a really good, warm, fuzzy memory. Don't remember all the details of the movie. You've got to rewatch it again. It's been a long time since I watched that movie again. And just the magic of all that Jim Henson stuff. Like, I grew up watching Sesame Street all from my childhood in the 80s. Watched most of anything to do with Henson, like Dark Crystal and all that. But yeah, just a really good experience.
Yeah, I never saw any of the Muppet movies in the cinema.
That's the only one I've ever seen. And I forgot about it for years. And then it was just, then one day I recalled, I went, oh yeah, I remember seeing that bit with my dad.
I do love the Muppets.
Because I was 4 years old.
And
shit, my memory went Swiss cheese. There's an addendum to that. Yeah. So
Show us.
on the Transformers show, of course, I pulled down the double cross and whatever, but he's like, I don't know, 88, 87, something like that. I've had him since then. But this one is from 1984.
Ooh.
And I got him on that day that I seen that movie.
Wow.
And he's so old that if you look at his feet, right, you'll see all the stuffings coming out. And notice that green there is a completely different green from his head, because I had this as a kid and I cuddled him every night for years on end. And he all started coming apart. So my grandmother, who used to make like woolen jumpers for our whole family and such, see, there's his actual original there. She made these pants from scratch by hand and sew them all. This jacket, she made this jacket for him with these buttons, and she completely did new covering for his whole head. So even the interior, and she just mimicked what was already on it. So his original head's still under there, but his neck is pretty. If she hadn't done that, his head would have severed right off. But because my grandmother was so skilled and so loving, she completely redid him. So that's why he still exists now. Hasn't completely. I mean, there's his other foot there.
You have to get him.
So that's why he's still around. And she made this red collar as well. Yeah. So he's still going. And then last year, my missus gifted me this little fella.
Oh, yeah.
Hidey ho!
He's not puddled to death just yet.
No. He's going to go on a doll stand on a shelf sometime this year.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I've got both the Kermits will be hanging out together.
Yeah, my Muppets, the Muppets Christmas Carol is a big one in our household. Me and the wife
I love
watch
that one
it every year.
I love the
Christmas.
Treasure Island of the
Great
Christmas
fun.
Carol.
Yeah, Michael Caine is great in Muppets Christmas Carol.
And you got
spend
Billy
Christmas
Connolly's
unemployed. But yeah, no, that's awesome, man, that you still have your OG Kermit from when you
and that's the oldest toy, if you want to call it toy, because it's plush or whatever. It's the oldest. It's not just the oldest toy in my collection. It's the oldest anything I own from as long as I've been alive. The next thing after that would probably be one of those Transformers from like 87, 88. I have got a Ninja Turtles t-shirt, which I should probably pull out next time we do a Turtles catalog thing. It's from like 88 or 90, but I've got an actual child size t-shirt from when I was 8 to 10 years old, and like half the third of the size I am now. And it's still in one piece and intact, and there's not a loose thread or anything, and all the print is Michelangelo swinging his nunchucks. And the shirt's hanging in my closet now, and it's still okay. I don't know why, because I got shirts from 2 years ago that are falling apart.
Better quality stuff.
For sure. I had a Leonardo one too, and that fell apart, so it wasn't as good a quality.
So Muppets was a big one for you then as a kiddo.
Yeah. I felt it was a real treat for me, because I just love Jim Henson stuff and Muppets and puppets and all that nonsense. But okay, I'll go.
It's very heartwarming that you cuddled the Kermit so much that he was literally.
Yeah. I've had a few like that when I was a kid, but that was one of the earliest ones. And my grandmother obviously knew that was my favorite, because it was falling apart so bad. That's why she redid all his exterior, so he survived. And then when I moved to Australia around the year 2000, as I said, I didn't have it for over nearly 10, 15 years. It was at my dad's place in storage. And then within the last sort of 12 years, I had a trip back there. I picked up a few belongings and things I'd saved there, which included that Kermit, like from my childhood, and that things I'd saved and he'd kept away from me in boxes that were nice and dry and, away from stuff.
Cool. Very cool. Been with you all the way.
So you want to go one from your list? You can go dark or shiny or ninja-y. You've got on there any of those options?
Well, I might go for something ninja-y, as in the Ninja Turtles.
Wow.
Because to the best of my recollection, oh yeah, Johnny got a deal on those boys this week.
What's that? You got something to say? Speaking to the microphone.
To the best of my recollection, the 1990 Ninja Turtles movie is the first movie I actually got to watch in the cinema. my older sister Joan brought me to see it. I was, I guess, 5 years old or something like that, and I absolutely loved it. I was already turtle mad, really into the cartoon, really into the
Yeah.
toys, really into just eating pizza, because that's how I thought you'd become a turtle eventually. You just ate enough
Yes,
pizza.
me too. Eat the green
And
pizza I got with the toy this week.
the big thing for going to see the turtles for me was I didn't even know what the cinema was really. I didn't know I was being taken
Wow.
to the cinema, and
Just
then
this
once I
dark
got in
room full
there,
of strangers.
yeah. And then when I saw that, wow, it's going to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or Hero Turtles as it was
Yeah.
in my cinema at the time, it totally blew my mind. It blew my mind so much that what I watched as a cartoon, that there was a live action version of it, I kept on referring to it as the real Turtles, as in it's like real life Turtles, because
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
I believed
All those
that
other
they were
turtles are so
actually
fake,
there.
man.
But I was just so enamored with it. And I know we probably spoke about it briefly when we did do our deep dive on that 1990 movie, but
Yeah.
it really just, it was such a big deal for me, not just
Yeah.
because I was a massive Turtles fan, but
Mhm.
because it was actually my first experience in a cinema looking at a
That's
big
awesome.
screen and just being wowed.
I didn't
I was
have it
just
on my
amazed.
list, but it is one of those other ones. Like if I put the next tier of list, that's on there for sure. And sometimes I forget that I saw it because I would have been 1990, so I would have been 10 when that came out, and this was I was too young to go by myself to them. It was when I was about 13 or 14 I started going by myself because I could ride my push bike 20 minutes to the cinema, and it was $5, and I had the money. When I was 10, obviously I didn't have money and I couldn't go by myself to the cinema. But we went another kid's birthday sort of thing, so there was a pile of kids, and we actually went to, before the movie, we went to laser tag, and it was the first time I'd ever played that. It was like indoors, and you put these big heavy vests on with the guns, and you're in the dark running around going pew pew pew. That was really fun. They used to have a thing in the city for that, and that was expensive. That was because my dad was friends with another guy they knew through work, and it was this other kid's birthday party, and they had more money than we did, so that's why I got to go to it, because normally I couldn't afford something like that. And while we were waiting for the laser tag, there was like 2 or 3 arcade games, one of which was Bad Dudes versus Dragon Ninja. So we were playing 2 players on that while we're waiting next group to go on the laser tag. After the laser tag, we went to the movie. And I don't know if it was that year or the next year they had the live action stage show, because the same kid, birthday, I think different year or different time of the same year, when they have what it was, they had the live action show, also went to that as well.
It's awesome. Yeah, because I've only ever seen like video footage of those live
Mm.
action shows. I was
And they're
never.
all different. They're all different. New Zealand, Australia, 2 different ones in America. UK had their own ones with local performers and all that.
Yeah, the turtles themselves look kind of freaky when you look at them up
Oh, they do.
close. But yeah, what a time though to be alive and to be in the middle of Turtle Mania, because that was another
Yeah.
thing about going to see that movie at the time. Like Turtle Mania was in full flow in
Yeah, that
1990.
was,
Like
I
it was
would call
just,
that the absolute peak or zenith, is like when that movie came out, because you'd already had the build up of the cartoon and the toy line over several years, the trading cards, little things like these little squeezy things you'd get cheap at the shops. You'd get like lollies, little soapy lollies in containers and stuff with turtles. Thing. I used to have a bar of soap. I never used it. I used to have the packet of bar of soap, the bubble bath, all the sleeping bags, all that shit. And then the movie was like the peak, and it was still popular, real, I guess, till around 92 or so in the sequel. But the toy line got to a peak, started going down like Masters did in the 80s, and like everything eventually does. But that was like just everything was still going. Like the cartoon was still going, the trading cards, even if they'd been out for a while, you could still get them in the stores, and all the merchandise was just everywhere.
the stakes as a child. To me, the stakes felt really high within the
Mm.
context of the story of the movie as well. Like I remember being like legit upset. I thought Raphael was going to die in the movie. Like I was convinced that he was going to expire and die in the bathtub as
Oh
Leo
man,
watched over him, and like I was kind of starting to get upset until like the moment
did
where
you
he
make
actually wakes up
a face like this?
a little bit. I looked like
It's like
less of
that,
a
a vegan
racist though.
face. Just very surprised, very shocked.
That's the face you make when everybody in the arena starts booing you because you're a bigot.
Bad man. Yeah,
Hey,
that
look,
peak was crazy, and then it was never like Turtles 2 came and went. I saw that on VHS at home. I said a poster of it too, and it was never as big again. Like not until
yeah,
well, ever. I mean, ever if you want to go just sales and peak, but not until really post year 2000 when they relaunched other shows and relaunched other toys in it.
yeah. I think I did get to see number 2 in the cinema, and then number 3. I think it might have went straight to video over here. I can't even remember if it was in the cinema over
Yeah.
here. But yeah, number 2 definitely didn't obviously hit the same way for me because I had grown up obviously a little bit, and I'd started to see more stuff. Because there's probably some people who will listen to this now and kind of think, oh wow, like as a cinema experience, as in something that you're kind of like witnessing and admiring for its visual, effects and stuff. Like the 1990 Turtles movie probably isn't all that spectacular, but
Oh, it
to
looked
me,
awesome though. It looked awesome. It
yeah,
was
it did
so
look awesome.
grungy and
It looked
dirty, and
awesome. Yeah.
like you're in the dark cinema and you're watching a dark, huge film. So it worked.
I remember when Shredder first appears on screen. I remember
Doom, doom,
thinking this is like
doom.
unbelievable looking. You could see like the light reflecting off his blades and stuff. I just thought he was
Yeah, they learned their
terrifying
lessons from
looking.
that Freddy. He had his blade, get
Yeah,
that light shining just right. The old New Line Cinema.
but yeah, Turtle Mania. What a time! What a
Yeah,
time!
that's funny. Like I probably would have put that on my list if I was expanding it to more, but I just went top of my head. I just went, but wrote them down. Didn't think about it until this week because I didn't want to overthink it. If I keep going on about it, I'll start changing my choices and think about it. I just went, nah, go
Yeah,
for the first ones that just like kind of hit me in the gut. So next one, I'm kind of going semi chronological, I guess, but back and forth. I got well, we'll go a two for because like I've got a couple extra ones on, so I don't hijack the length of the show. I'll just throw 2 out for this one. So I'm going to go Gremlins and Labyrinth. So Gremlins I saw with my mum, so that was kind of the highlight, seeing that with my mum, because rarely did I see movies with my mum when I was a kid. It was more like something I would see with my dad. So that was a good memory seeing that. I don't remember a whole lot about the movie. I mean, obviously I've got it on DVD and I've watched it a bunch of times since then and seen it on TV, but I don't know if I can even remember actually anything of the movie because I was so young at the time. I just remember that we went to it, and I remember afterwards we were walking through an arcade, and she got me this Gizmo plush. So a very similar experience to the Muppet movie. Got a curve, and I had this Gizmo for a long time, more than 10 years, and he was like one of my favorite little cuddle buddies. Like had in the bed and all that. And years later, when my brother, who's about 10 years younger than me, when he was getting older, he adopted that Gizmo and it became one of his favorite things. So it went on to have a second life with him. And it was a really good quality plush. They've done other ones since, so they're just not, they're all a bit weird looking, not the same when I've gone to pick up something similar, and they're just not quite right.
Gremlins is an unbelievably fantastic movie. It's one of my favorite movies. It's one of my favorite Christmas movies.
Yeah.
I was unfortunate. I did not get to see the original in the cinema. I would get to see the sequel in the cinema, as I recall, but I would have
Mhm.
loved to have seen that first movie in the cinema. And I might
Yeah.
one of these days I might go to, because sometimes they rescreen it around Christmas time,
Oh, nice.
so I might get a chance. But I imagine though, as a youngster, seeing the Mogwais, you would have been like, that's super cute, but I imagine seeing the actual gremlins themselves was pretty terrifying at times for you as a youngster. Who knows? Maybe
I,
I'm
I'm
wrong there.
I do remember not being scared, but I think even as a younger kid, I always like kind of, I'd read books about dinosaurs and Tintin and Asterix. I was aware that movies would pretend that they were special effects. So very rare for anything to scare me in the film. I mean, you get the jump scares and noise spikes. That's just shocking you. But being thematically scared, I remember one time I saw a bit of Silence of the Lambs when I was like probably 9 or 10. Not on purpose. The adults were watching at the room and I was going to bed, and I saw a bit of it through the door. And I think it happened to be the scene where Hopkins slices off the guy's face and wears it like a creepy pigment. That fucking disturbed me. I was like, just because I didn't understand what the fuck was going on. I had no context for it. I was like, why is he taking the man's face? So that disturbed me, but it didn't give me nightmares. I was just like curious, why is he doing that? Because I literally saw it through the crack of a door when I was going to bed. But the Gremlins didn't scare me because they're like a real movie special effect. Whereas a real life man who's a serial killer, that's scary.
I remember I was totally caught off guard. So I think my dad brought it home on video, or maybe he might have even taped it off TV at the time. But I hadn't seen like a video sleeve or a cover. So I didn't get to see, that classic picture of the actual Gremlins. So when I started watching it, I kind of just assumed it was like a Christmas Muppet style movie.
It's gonna be
like
happy Muppets.
Yeah, because for like the first yeah, but for the first like 25 minutes, half an hour, all it is Gizmo and then the other Mogwais when they eventually come into it. But I do remember specifically when they do the actual the metamorphosis of the Mogwais to the Gremlins, and that bit where the teacher in the school gets stabbed in the arse with a needle.
Yeah.
Like that freaked me out as a kid because it just had taken a total turn. It went from being like cutesy.
I don't think my mum would have known how violent it was before we went, or she wouldn't have taken it to me. Not that, I mean, I've only ever seen a few movies with her, but the next movie I saw after that with her would probably been Blade in the 90s, and we both loved that, but I was like 17, 18 now. And like when it finished, she was like, wasn't that awesome? I was like, yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
But she probably wouldn't have taken me to it if she'd known like the level of violence.
What about because you mentioned Labyrinth there as well? What are your memories?
Yes,
of
Labyrinth. That's my other two. I thought I'll finish off the 80s ones. Yeah, Labyrinth I saw with my dad in the cinema, and that one I got a really vivid memory of, probably because I'm just a little bit older. I pretty much could remember the entire film, scene for scene, shot for shot, like the story, the dialogue. I could remember virtually everything from it. It was a really strong memory, and I just remember from the opening scenes, I just loved it. I liked the film score. I liked all the puppetry. Like, it was just next level stuff from all the Henson workshop and all that. Not just Henson the man, but all the team and his son, of course, and everyone else was amazing. And it wasn't just, you're in this much bigger cinematic frame. We're not just seeing the Muppets on a little square TV box anymore. We've got this big frame. It's a big fantasy movie. We've got a mix of puppetry, practical effects, live actors, and backgrounds. And I imagine that, I don't know, there's probably some matte paintings and other stuff in there, as well as all the practical sets and walls. And it's like the most magical thing. Probably the most similar cinema experience was when I saw Roger Rabbit, also with my dad, where you got live actors with animated characters as opposed to puppets. Just pure magic when you watch it. It's like, how the hell do they make this crazy thing happen? It's just amazing. But I love the story, like the characters. I've always liked David Bowie as a musician. Like, he was of my parents' generation, but pretty much, like, I would have been hearing David Bowie in the womb when my mum was pregnant. That's how long I've been listening to David Bowie. So before I was even born, I was like, it's like the background music of my life. So yeah, he was awesome in it. Really enjoyed his over. I wouldn't call it over the top, but it's it's hammy. It's like a hammy kind of thing, but he does it seriously. But it's it's a very particular role or whatever. And young what's his name? My mind's gone blank now. The actress who's in
Jennifer Connelly.
Yes, Jennifer Connelly, a very young Jennifer Connelly, who was, I think it was about 14, 15, something like that in the film. And she was excellent in it. She was very good, like, relatable sort of character in it. She didn't come across, she's meant to come across as a bit entitled and selfish because that's the story and the theme, but she comes across like a regular person, not like some bloated movie star or that sort of thing. So I just loved it, and I've watched it so many times over the years, and just it's one of those films that's a real guilty pleasure. I can watch any old time and just enjoy the heck out of it. And I've always liked Bowie's music, so I enjoy the songs he did for the movie and that, and all the puppetry, the big crazy robots and Hoggle and the little worm, the guys that throw their heads off, and it's a great film for all ages. And it's also, I don't give a shit about getting into like real in-depth film analysis criticism of it, but if you want to, it does stand up to like metaphors for like capitalism and all sorts of other things. It actually stands up quite well to like analysis.
It's like unfortunately I did not watch it in the cinema. It was, however, though, like a regular watch in my house on video. I absolutely loved it. Loved the soundtrack. Like you were saying, like it just gives you this real. It's like it feels magical even as an adult when you rewatch it. There's like a
It's like
real
watching
kind of
Willy Wonka,
whimsical
like
look.
good
Yeah,
music and good crazy stuff going on.
and the design of the labyrinth itself, like, you know, when she's like walking the paths and walking like the areas, and just everything's so topsy turvy and unnatural. It's
Yeah,
really, really bizarre look. Bowie is yeah, he's almost got like a sinister vibe to him at times, and it definitely where you're
yeah,
like,
he's like he should. He's that sort of archetype in the film where he's like I guess they call him like chaotic neutral if you want to go like D&D kind of terms. You know, he's not actually evil, but he's definitely sinister.
but it's one of those movies where, at least for me anyway, like when you start off watching it, even though, yeah, look, you're the baby brother's being kidnapped, it still feels more like you're going on an adventure at the beginning of the movie.
Mm,
It's only when you get a little bit in, you actually start to feel the tension of the clock ticking down, and the realization that maybe she's not going to be able to rescue her brother before the time is up. It starts
yeah,
to kind of almost get to you. But it's a class movie. The soundtrack is unbelievable. Like, it's just really,
I
really
love
good.
the end where it's all over, and it does that thing like that Wizard of Oz thing, like it was all a dream, or was it, or did it happen?
Or
And
was
then
it?
they all pop up
Yes.
in the room, and they're all singing the big song at the end, and it's like the end of a kind of picture storybook sort of thing.
Brilliant. It's brilliant. And like I said, even as an adult, I still kind of get the that kind of electric magical vibe from watching it.
Yeah, I love the scene
Love the
where
puppets.
they're walking around on the kind of walls, and he's like rotating and spinning around, and like a kind of MC Escher picture. Like those things are amazing.
Even the you know, at near the beginning of the movie where he's got the crystal ball in his hand and he's like
Yeah, and it's got they
juggling it
have
almost like,
the double guy who does that reaching behind them with the glove.
yeah, like that's awesome. Like that stuff is all, yeah, there's so many cool, quirky visual effects in the movie.
Mm.
And it's
Yeah, when
just
it
like,
goes into those, and then it goes into a ball in the ball. It's like into the big
yes, yeah.
like fantasy sequence with the masquerade and all that. And
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. My missus is another big fan of it as well, so
I
it's
like
a
the scene with
semi-regular
the
watch.
that little fox, and they have the bog of eternal stench, but then you get a real live dog that he's riding, the puppet riding a real dog. It
Yeah,
just looks so cool.
one of the cats who lives here, his name's Ragamuffin. He actually looks like that guy who rides the dog. He just kind of has the same type of face. He looks like a Henson puppet. Yeah, no, that's that would have been a quality movie to have seen in the cinema. I would have loved to have seen that in the cinema as
Yeah, like
as a
and
youngster.
the nice thing is it's one I can just vivid all the other ones, the early ones like Gremlins and Muppets. I have just this like 30 seconds of memory, whereas Labyrinth I just recalled like pretty much the whole thing. It was just a great memory.
Awesome.
So what do you
What a
got?
time.
What's your next one?
I think for my next one, I'll talk about The Shining, because so this one, believe it or not, so it's a movie I'd seen many, many, many times, as I'm sure people are not surprised to hear it all. But I only got
The Shinning.
to
Don't get
watch
sued.
The Shining. Yeah, I only got to watch it in the cinema. I think it was like maybe 2016, 2017. They did a special like Halloween screening of it.
Cool.
So myself, my wife, and our niece went to see it, and I just absolutely love it because I love The Shining. It's one of my favorite movies. I love Jack Nicholson. I love Stanley Kubrick. So getting to see a Kubrick movie in the cinema, because I was kind of I had a few like re-releases or re-screenings that I was thinking of that I was going to put on the list, but I ended up going with The Shining just because it had, you know, it was a pretty profound movie for me growing up. My father was a big Stephen King fan, and that kind of trickled down to me and my brothers. We were just big horror and King fans in general, and The Shining
Nice.
was always one of my favorites, even though Stephen King himself kind of hated the movie. I think most
Yeah,
people
that's
love it.
hilarious. And they made that
But
TV version with the dude from Wings that was like horrible.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, which King preferred for some reason. But
Yeah. But
one
that's like
thing I
George
did,
Lucas going, I like episode one, it's all the technology, and just like just like you don't care about the story, you want to play with toys and special effects.
one thing that I really got a kick out of was, you know, so like I mentioned earlier with Star Wars, it was the same as with The Shining. I was going to see a movie that I already knew what happened in the movie. I'd seen it a
Yeah.
whole bunch of times, but it was great sitting in a cinema with a load of young people who had never watched it before and who were getting afraid at the scary bits. It was just cool to actually see people react um, to the bits and actually getting afraid, even though it's this movie that I'd seen a million times. I don't know. Yeah, maybe I'm just a bit of a sadist, and I got a kick out of these youngsters like being scared
Oh, that sounds
shitless of
awesome.
Jack Torrance breaking down a door with an axe, and you know, it just kind of, I suppose, it underlined the fact that if a movie is good and if it's a good scary movie, then that will kind of transcend generations, and it doesn't really matter how
Mm.
young you are. If you're watching it for the first time, you probably are going to get a little bit of a scare.
And that's very cinematic film, like as you know, like the lenses and wide shots and the setting, like you know, it's very cinematic. It'll be very beautiful to watch on the big screen.
Yeah, and it's really impressive, especially all those interior kind of long shots of the Overlook
Mm.
Hotel, and it's really visually impressive, and it also sounds brilliant as well in the cinema. Like, it
Yeah, it
really
was.
adds to the overall ambience and kind of feel of the movie. It's, I know, like, I don't want to veer too much off topic, but it's one of those movies where you just don't get a lot of movies these days where there's long periods of silence and no dialogue. But The
Yeah.
Shining has a lot of that, and it really builds tension, especially if you're watching the movie for the first time, where
Well, you
it
get that
feels like there's just
isolation,
nothing.
and
Yes,
you get
yes, exactly.
the big empty spaces and this massive rooms, and then that plays into if you've been to any real life places that are supposedly haunted, that feeling you need the quietness to get the creepiness.
Yes, exactly. And you know, look, it was a great experience getting to watch it on the big screen and just to see it in its all its glory. It was the Kubrick like director's cut that we got to watch as well. That was
Mm-hmm.
the one they were showing, so we got a nice little bit of extra footage thrown in as well. So yeah, but I think like the reason I put this one on my list, apart from how much I enjoyed it, it was because I wanted to talk about that, just how the modern audience interpreted it. Because our niece, like she was probably maybe 17 or 18 at the time herself, and like she really enjoyed it and was like, you know, so it just it transcends it sorry transcend it transcends the generations in that respect. You know, it can still make an impact even on the younger folk who may not be as into that type of thing,
It's
you know.
funny you
I
said
think
transcend generations and younger folk, because that good cinema experience reminds me of one of my worst cinema experiences. Guess
give it
what
to me.
movie I saw? And like, I might have to do maybe a sequel to the show. Might be like top 5 movies I genuinely regret seeing at the cinema and almost walked out of because I thought they were bloody awful. Um, Ready Player One, which has a scene in it from The Shining, but redone in shitty PlayStation graphics.
Yeah, I didn't get to see that one in the movies, only later on. I think I
It was
downloaded a
awful.
torrent.
It was so bad. In the first half an hour, I was just like, "This is garbage. This is garbage filmmaking. Everything about it was awful." The only cool thing I liked, I think there was like 10 seconds towards the end where we saw a big giant Gundam robot. And I was like, that was kind of cool. Technically, I don't know if the Iron Giant was in there. He might have been in there, but I thought the pop culture character things might have been cooler, but they were just little tiny cameos. It was the Michael Bay turtles and not the good turtles. Just wipe it from my memory.
Yeah, that's my main memory of watching Ready Player One is really just identifying the various little bits of pop culture references that they make throughout the movie.
The MacGuffin they have for the programmer guy and about the Easter egg and all that, when they got anywhere near that, as soon as they mentioned the stuff to do with Atari, they went, oh, is this going to be the Easter egg from the real life Atari thing? Because I've read shitloads about 80s microcomputers and consoles. And so the last 30 minutes of the film, I pretty much knew what's happening based on real life stuff from the Atari video game Easter egg. And I'm like, that's not good writing. That's terrible.
Yeah. That being said, and even though it was a bad experience, I might rewatch it one of these days, but I should probably read the book. I heard the book was actually good. Maybe I should just read the book.
The book's got to be better because they're just like it was just so shallow, and like the writing of the characters and the things they were doing was just so. It felt like I was watching just like some mid-90s TV show, low budget thing, and where they couldn't be bothered to write anything meaningful for any of the dialogue or the characters, and there was no real pathos or drama or nothing. It's just like, here's this entirely predictable thing that leads into this entirely next predictable thing, you know?
Yeah, you're just you're watching these cutscenes from a PS2 game.
Yeah.
Just to get you to the next big thing.
But anyway, yeah, I'm going off topic there, but just because it had all those pop culture references in it, and obviously lots of video game stuff, and I thought, so it sounded fun. But then they have a massive scene from The Shining, which is a big iconic film, nothing to do with video games, and it's certainly pop culture, but everything else in the film, it just completely clashes with it, and it's a big chunk of the film.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a jarring kind of transition.
It's like they tried to turn The Shining into a level in Tomb Raider on PlayStation and then put it in a movie, and I was like, it made no sense.
From what I understand, obviously when it was in book form, they could be a lot more liberal when it came to like copyright and stuff of having stuff included. I'd say in the movie their hands were somewhat tied to franchises that had some type of like
for sure
license link to the studio.
Yeah.
Not that I'm making excuses for them. They still should have made a better movie.
Well, they still could have just written a bit of. I'm not talking about the overall story, but just the kind of way it plays out with the characters and the scenes. It's just so hacky. It's just like they could have just written it better.
The rest of the audience receive it in a similar vein to you, or do you think they enjoyed it?
I have no idea, because it wasn't like a noisy audience or whatever, and it was just kind of like a comedy. People laugh. A horror movie, sometimes people jump or scream, and if it's just the middle of the road movie, it's just silence. It's just silence through the whole thing.
Were you stone cold sober for it?
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I wasn't having nothing like that, and there was no. I mean, people were watching it. They weren't looking at phones or whatever, so they were at least watching it. But okay, we'll move on from that one. And I'm going to chuck out another twofer here. So a double twofer. Matrix 2 and Wayne's World 2. Matrix 2, not a particularly good film. But I really enjoyed just the big action set pieces in it. And I was living in Perth, and it was fun to go watch it at the cinema, big bombastic spectacle action stuff. The story was not great. But I enjoyed it enough. Went back next week and watched it again just to see that big action highway set piece battle again. Very much like some kind of video game action. Not great cinema, but just cool special effects and cool stunts and all that. It was a cool spectacle. It was fun. Not a great film though, but yeah, doesn't stand up to the first one. Third one, even took a nosedive as well. But Wayne's World 2 was great. Fun. I saw that and went back the next week. I saw it first week by myself, kept talking about it to my mate, said, you should go watch it. And then the next week we went and watched it. together. And after we watched it, we were just like laughing and laughing, walking out, quoting lines from the film as we were going back to get on our push bikes to ride back home. And even like the next day at school, like we were still talking about it and still just saying lines and joking around and just cracking up and just couldn't stop laughing about it. Just had a great time. And I like both the Wayne's World movies, but it's probably a rare case where I do actually like the sequel better than the first one. There's just so many fun moments, like Del Preston, like, these babies tend to heat up. You want to fire them off in short bursts. So it's like, any questions? Like, yeah, when did you become a total nut bar? It's like he's gone on an acid trip and never came back.
No, that's quite the contrast in movies for your two for there.
Yeah.
I'll tackle Matrix Reloaded first because I actually also really enjoyed that in the cinema. I went to see it a couple of times, and for the exact same reason as you, I specifically wanted to rewatch the highway chase action sequence, which not only is incredibly visually impressive, the music is absolutely
Yeah, the music. Yeah, great
fantastic.
soundtrack as well.
I actually sometimes would play that musical track over video games when I was playing them to try and get my adrenaline pumping to do stuff in a game. Fantastic. And look, yeah, it doesn't hold up to the first movie at all. They kind of shit the bed with it, but it does have some very, very visually impressive action sequences and
I
a
still
great
love the
soundtrack.
Matrix as a concept and the cast and the characters, and I can watch all three of them and enjoy the overall story and experience. But it just was a letdown after the first film.
Before I speak about Wayne's World, I will mention as well the first Matrix film, which I went to see in the movie, as in the first Matrix movie. The reason I went to see that movie was actually just so I could watch the trailer for the Phantom Menace before the movie. And then once I was there, I was like, oh, I may as well stay and watch this movie, which turned out to be a great movie. So, yeah, but that was how big a Star Wars fan I was, that I was going to watch another movie
Yeah,
just to see a trailer.
I don't know in New Zealand if I didn't see the first Matrix. I didn't see it. I was in Australia on VHS, whereas the second and third ones I watched at the cinema because I lived close to the cinema at the time in Perth, so I could just walk over there. And I've lost my train of thought.
But Wayne's World, though, awesome.
Yeah, Wayne's World. Yeah,
Wayne's World 2, I didn't get to see either of them in the cinema, but I'd imagine it was a fucking great laugh, especially if you're going with your mates from school.
Yeah, it was so fun. And I saw, because I also saw So Married and Axe Murder at the cinema. So I knew I can't remember if that was before or after the first Wayne's World, but I think after the first one. But I knew who Mike Myers was. I'd never seen SNL, but I'm aware that he was like a comedian type dude, whatever, doing those kind of movies. The same way you get like Belushi and Dan Aykroyd and all this, Bill Murray and all that shit in the 80s. So I enjoyed seeing that one at the cinema. Great laughs, great fun, good fun set pieces. A lot of as a movie, I would think it wouldn't stand up that great. I mean, as cinema, I would say it's not really cinema. It's just a fun popcorny movie with a bunch of strung together by a bunch of gags and homages to other films. A lot of the gags I didn't get until 10 or 20 years later when I'd watch films like The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman, and then I understood the stuff about the wedding chapels and all this and back and forth, and even the gags on The Simpsons, like Mrs. Bouvier, where Abe goes, shatters and falls through the glass. So there was lots of stuff in it that I didn't get the first time around, and references to like 70s rock and roll and other things. There's just so many fun things in there. And ironically, at the time, I had no idea who the fuck Jim Morrison was when I watched it. And years later, when I got into more listening to it, as I grew up listening to more music and that, particularly like the Doors, Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Beatles, Bowie, all that kind of stuff. The Doors are my all-time favorite band. So it's funny that having this like dude doing this like Vision Quest thing with the weird naked Indian. It's like, you got to put on a concert, Wayne. It's like, Jim, nobody showed up. Doesn't matter.
Well, for me, both Wayne's World movies are probably long overdue a rewatch because they are so much fun.
I've got them lined up on my tablet to rewatch again next week.
And I do always enjoy when you do your solo streams. You usually play that funny clip from the radio station
with Harry Shearer.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And now
You're
the
not
dude that
listening
used
to
to
a
be
word
like
we're
Darcy
saying.
on Married with Children.
Yeah. No, that would have been great times. I'd imagine seeing Wayne's World 2. Brillo.
Yeah, remember the first one had Bohemian Rhapsody, and for a time, Bohemian Rhapsody music spiked because of that movie.
Yeah, it had its influence on the charts, bringing this stuff back into the public
Yeah,
consciousness, you know?
and it was cool they got to have like Aerosmith in the film, which I never particularly been a fan of them, and they were certainly not really in their heyday then, but it was still cool they got some genuine bands and stuff to be in the movie as well.
Yeah, Wayne's World 1 and 2, I usually watch alongside like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bill
Yeah.
and Ted's Bogus Journey. I just get the same type of fun vibe off both sets of those movies.
I've watched Bogus Journey heaps of times because I'd seen Bill and Ted on TV, seen it on rental, and when we had the dodgy 2 VHS machines set up, but a Bogus Journey's one that I dubbed myself on the weekend and I had it, so I was able to watch it over and over again for months.
Yeah, great times, definitely. But yeah, Wayne's World 2, I imagine, was just awesome fun back in the day to see that for the first time.
Yeah, it was awesome. And joking about it with my friend, like years later, we were still quoting it. Like,
Well, it's very quotable, you know?
mm. And I love,
I wonder,
oh, yeah, another thing I love in that movie that I didn't know about until probably, I don't know, 10, 15 years later, with Nail and I as a character, in that's the same guy who plays that Del Preston dude. And he's not quite canonically, but basically he's the same character in both films. He's
interesting.
a different name, but he's basically meant to be like the same character.
Yeah, there's the, it's not official, but it's there.
Yeah, yeah.
It cannot be denied, the connection. Yeah, that's
You've told
awesome,
us
man.
about the shiny place in the old murder hotel. So we've got a darker place to
Yes.
take us to now.
So my last one here, now this is a bit of a weird one. Well, it's not really a weird one. Lots of people do
This
love
is
this
weird.
film, I'm sure. It's The Dark Knight from 2008, the second
Did you get to see it on
Chris.
IMAX or regular one?
I got to see this in practically every type of screen you can think of because I went to see it about 4 times. So here's the thing. I have since rewatched this movie, The Dark Knight, at home quite a few times, and I have
Yeah, I have
never
on the
enjoyed it.
DVD in it.
I've never really enjoyed it as much as I did when I got to see it in
Mm.
the cinema. There was something about this movie that made it just perfect for the cinema. The soundtrack was perfect for the cinema. I was just one thing I remember when I went to see the movie first, I was like, okay, that was a very good movie. But what was really sticking out in my mind was the opening heist, the bank heist scene with the
Yeah, the
Joker
Michael Mann
guys.
scene.
Yes, it reminded me so much of Heat, and I absolutely
Yeah,
loved it.
yeah.
And to be honest with you, I think it was the love of the opening of the movie nearly more than anything else in the movie kept bringing me back to the cinema to rewatch it because I just loved that entire opening. I loved the music to it. I just loved the
Yeah,
setup
it
to
was
the
like Hans
heist.
Zimmer,
And
wasn't
yeah, it was so good. It was so good. And you know, obviously, like Heath Ledger's performance of the Joker is very memorable, and you know,
it? I know where he got
rest in
that
peace, Heath
voice,
Ledger.
despite what he says in interviews. Go back and watch any clip of Tom Waits from the 1970s on YouTube. That's exactly where he got their voice. Not just the voice, but
I,
some of the mannerisms as well.
I remember, so I went to see it, and I was just, I was totally blown away by it, and I was like, okay, I cannot wait until this comes out on DVD. And then my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she's like, what do you want for Christmas? And like, I want The Dark Knight on DVD. I can't wait to watch The Dark Knight again. And then literally on Christmas Day, when I started watching again, it's like, oh, this is not really
The magic's
remotely as
gone.
good. Yeah, the magic was gone. The magic was gone. And that was kind of the reason I put it on the list. It's not even that it's that important of a movie to me, but I do think it is a
Mm.
good example of the cinema maybe doing a lot of legwork and making something
Yeah, you
seem
got the
better
visuals,
than
you
it
got the
is.
sound.
and because I know for a fact I wasn't the only one going back multiple times, apart from my wife, who I like dragged with me, but I also was seeing the same, regular faces in the cinema. But yeah, for me, that opening will nearly never be beaten. That bank heist, and even to this day, like since I've gone back, I've bought the Blu-ray and I've got a really nice TV and a sound setup, but I still can't reach that pinnacle of sound
Yeah,
and
it's not the
visual
same.
that I got in the cinema.
Do you know that's
So
it's
even
funny
though,
because my I won't say it yet, but my last pick, I had that same experience where I really enjoyed the cinema, watched it at home, and went, this is not great."
yeah, that's an excellent segue though, because now I'm curious,
Yeah.
what was your last pick going to
Well,
be?
I'll tell you before I do. I will mention I did see Dark Knight in the cinema before I met my missus, and I talked to her and said, "Have you ever watched this?" And she goes, "Oh yeah, I hated it. She found it like too depressing and dark and didn't like it." I'm like, "That's all the things I liked about it." But yeah, I really enjoyed it in the cinema. It was awesome. I didn't know a whole lot about the IMAX stuff until I watched the special features on the DVD years later. But he shot certain scenes like chase scenes and other bullshit on IMAX cameras. It's only something like 10 or 20 minutes of the film, but it really makes it more special if you're able to see that IMAX giant screen, which I've only ever seen IMAX once, like a Mount Everest climbing documentary where everybody died. It was fairly depressing. I only think I've seen on IMAX. But he also, I was watching a retrospective on Nolan films just yesterday on YouTube on the channel. Patrick Willems does awesome film essays and stuff, and like really cool, very entertaining, very funny as well. And he went through all like Nolan's films and that. When I think I've seen all of his films because I've got Following on DVD, that black and white one he did. And he pointed out, and when he talked about the Dark Knight on this video essay thing, it's the first film where Nolan, I mean, he made real films, he made Memento and he made Insomnia with Al Pacino, all that. It's the first film where he's actually using proper film technique, and instead of just doing all close-ups and two shots on camera, he's actually pulling back and showing you the scene and showing you what's around you. Because everything before that was basically close-ups, almost like watching Days of Our Lives on TV. It was all focused on dialogue and close-ups. Even The Prestige, beautiful film, but like a lot of close-ups and really seeing more than one or two people on screen at once. So it's mostly almost like TV shooting and frames like the front behind. Whereas Dark Knight was cinematic. We're pulling back. We're seeing the city with New York and Chicago and whatnot, and like the zip line when he comes down from the building and all that, and Hong Kong, all that stuff. It was really kind of the evolution of Nolan as a filmmaker. And then when you get to his other stuff like Inception and that, you're like, wow. Like, I mean, the story's fun, but visually, like, it's just feels more like watching a 70s Bond film when you get to Inception. That was awesome cinema experience. But that's my ramble. And I'll get on to the final pick. And because I cheated, I wrote down the ones I thought of. So I had a bit more than you did. So that's why I kind of breezed through them quicker. Because I just went scribble, 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 forget about it until now. And this isn't a great film. It's an okay film that was fucking awesome in the cinema. Is Dredd, the Carl Urban Dredd, not the Sylvester Stallone, Rob Schneider schlomozzle, which is actually not a completely terrible film in terms of practical effects and sets. They built some really cool stuff like Batman and the Shadow kind of sets, but the awful movie. But yeah, Dredd, the Carl Urban, that was awesome. They kept the bloody helmet on. They made it like the comics and stuff, the UK comics, and it's similar to like say Alien Romulus. It feels like a proper comic book story, not trying to be comic booky. It's a story that's just one day in the life of Dredd. It's not trying to be a big epic or be over the top. It's basically Die Hard, but the twist is it's Die Hard in a building because they've done so many Die Hards by now. And at the time, everyone kept comparing it to The Raid. I'm like, well, The Raid was good. I mean, better than good, probably a better film, actually. But it was just a whole bunch of martial arts stunts going through levels. And I'd say it's almost like a Bruce Lee going up pagoda levels thing, whereas Dredd, similar. But to me, it felt a lot more like Die Hard. He starts off on the bottom level. He's one guy. It's a whole bunch. It's a bunch of terrorists and whatever trying to take over the building. And he's got to stop him. And he's not the everyman like McClane, but he kind of is because he's just Dredd, but like they're all judges. They're all kind of interchangeable. They got the all the weapons and the guns, and you know they're like judge, jury, and executioner because they live in these crazy big mega cities and all that. But the thing that was awesome was like the cinematography was awesome, the visual style. It was very dark, but not so dark you couldn't see anything, but had cool visual style, like watching the Ninja Turtles or Shadow or something. And the soundtrack really kicked ass in that cinema sound, and the gun explosion and some of the slow motion that they didn't overuse. They had a little bit here and there, but not too much, like a fucking Zack Snyder film or half the film's slow motion.
Am I right in saying, because I think I felt a little bit like this as well.
Yeah. When I watched it on DVD, I was like, man, this is really flat. And it's still cool, but not the same experience.
Yeah, because in the cinema, I remember thinking that the slow-mo bits actually were pretty cool, especially, you know, when Momo is
because it's meant to be the person on that drug is experiencing a slowdown.
It felt though on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever that
felt cheesy.
Yeah, it just didn't feel the same. It did not feel the same. It felt like I was watching like a video game cutscene more so.
Yeah. I've watched it once or twice since then, but I've listened to the soundtrack a whole bunch. The soundtrack still sounds pretty good, like the Matrix and that.
And I think, no, don't get me wrong. Like I do really like that Dread movie, but you are right in what you say.
I wish they'd made another one.
Yeah, I wish they'd made another one or 3 even if they'd kept up with that tone. Because it was really impressive, especially in the cinema. It was very visually impressive. But I'm glad you kind of used like, because this is like, I suppose this is a little bit like Matrix Reloaded and Dark Knight in the sense that on the big screen with proper sound, it can make it something more than maybe what it is.
Yeah, it's like watching a pay-per-view wrestling live versus at home, and you're going, oh, what's all the fuss? But if you were there live on the day, maybe it was really special.
Because I don't know about you, like I know you mentioned Matrix Reloaded earlier, but I know any time since I went back to watch Matrix Reloaded, I haven't gotten the same great vibe that I got from those cinema experiences watching it.
Like I tried to read some of the comic books back then, which were by who's who of good comic talent, but the earliest ones they had were on CRTs. They were digital, and the text was too small to read. And then they printed them as physical books, and the text was still too small to read, so I couldn't read the damn things. And then they made some bunch of video games that were really rubbish, and I was like, man, I really like this world. I want to see some cool Matrix-y stuff. And I'm like, I can't read the comics. The games are crap, and the movie sequels weren't great. Can't they do a good Matrix thing? You have this good idea.
One thing I also really enjoyed about Dread at the time was just the ultra violence in it. Like I do enjoy seeing some gore and some squibs and some blood in my movies, so it was a nice throwback in that respect.
And it's perfectly in style of what it should be for Dread, you know.
Yeah but it is an excellent example, and you know whether it's Dread, Dark Knight, Matrix Reloaded, you can see something in the cinema and it can be mind-blowing, and then you can watch it on a home release and just not be as impressed with what you've seen. And I think in that
I've watched plenty of drama films over the years I absolutely love that were like really good films, but you know, they're dialogue films. They're not really memorable cinema experiences, just talking heads. But there might be great films that stand up years later you can watch again and again and have really good story and themes and like a novel on screen, but not memorable in the cinema. But if it's cheap and you've got free time, you'll watch it. But some of those films I'd rather watch at home on the TV.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there 100%. And I have a feeling we have a similar catalog of movies that we'd have similar thoughts of had we, watched them before and whatnot. But no, well, like that's the thing about the cinema experience. You'll get the rough with the smooth, the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
And we could probably even do at some point an episode with another 5 or 6 memorable movie experiences.
Maybe we'll get Junior in there. I saw that.
Because I was a little bit like you. I was quickly want just to put down the first ones that came into my head.
Yeah,
but it is
just don't overthink it. Just like
it could be revisited at another point, definitely.
Sure. Might get a sequel or a spin-off.
Might get a sequel. Might get
a Hellraiser Part 8.
Honey Vision. Yeah. Honey Vision. That's what we need in the cinema.
Yeah, that was actually our sequel to last week's show, because we had the wrestling classic, and I thought, what can I bring over? There's all the different bullshit things I used to have in the cinema. Like you got real cameras and styles, but then you used to have gimmick things that would come up. This is in something, whatever, just kind of bullshit thing they'd make up for marketing.
What's on the menu for next week? What are we bringing the fans?
Well, unlike the previous 12 months where I kind of planned out all sorts of shows, I have no fucking clue. I haven't planned it, and I'm going to leave it up in the air, and we're going to decide during the week.
Excellent. It's going to be surprise episode.
It's going to be a real cliffhanger.
Could be anything, could be everything, could be nothing. Anything.
But yeah, there's nothing planned. I know some stuff we're going to do in a couple of weeks. There's some more like wrestling chats and stuff and other ones, but I'm kind of spacing them out. So yeah.
Yeah, if we can't come up with anything between now and next week, we're just going to do a 3-hour presentation on NFTs and Bitcoin.
Yes. Boba Joe's, Boho, Baubles, NFT, HD, 3D, 4D, sorry. 3D and 4D, depending on where you live. So put your goggles on, get your earbuds in, get your Boba Joe wireless.
An educational experience. Beware.
Yes. If you get viruses or get corrupted, don't blame me.
Our next episode will actually be a cinema-only release, so you'll have to go to your
cinema
to watch.
It's a cinema only, but it will be on closed circuit. So
yeah,
you have to be in a particular city at the right time, and there might be technical difficulties.
Yeah, and if you don't get to see it in the cinema, you're just gonna have to get some like bootleg 7th generation VHS copy of the show instead. It's the only way you're going to get to see it.
And so if it happens to if we get to the most exciting part of next week's episode and the sound just cuts out and we're going, it's just on purpose. We're just messing with you. We go silent.
Yeah,
10 minutes.
We're just fucking with you.
That's their commentary on the silent films.
Yeah, we control the vertical and the horizontal and the audio.
That's right. Do not adjust your Boba Joe baubles at home. Don't do it.
And folks who've been listening along today, throw us a few of your own good cinema stories or cinema examples.
What's your favorite?
Do you hate the cinema? Are you glad that people don't really go anymore? Do you just want to stay in your house? Some of us do.
I wish there was classic films to watch, but there's just, like at like a local thing, I could go watch them, but there's not. That's what I miss the most.
One thing I will say is that I often have a better time at the cinema when there's not too many other people there. So.
Yeah. I used to go at off-peak times when it wasn't so busy, because when there was too many, like back in the 90s, it would be full, but people would watch the movie. They weren't mucking about on phones, whereas post-2000, if I went there and it was full, everyone's talking and they'll get phones. They're doing anything but watching the movie.
Yeah. The glory days are over.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Leave us a like, leave us a comment. Tell us if you had a favorite cinematic experience or a bad experience. I'll catch you guys next time.
Take care, folks. Have a good one.